So Parshas Pinchas is, I mean, I guess on face value, it sounds like it's kind of an odd collection of things because for some reason, even though Pinchas did this zealous act in last week's Parsha, we shift to talking about him for a brief moment at the beginning. Because he was a kanoi, because he was a spirited zealot, he is granted the reward of peace and kahuna. Different ways to understand that. But the parsha kind of continues with what maybe seems like odd things to throw in right after that, especially when you're naming the parsha Pinchas. It continues right after that, and it says, we're going to end the good times with Midian. We had our fun. That's over. And then we take a census. We take our first census of the people who were not counted at Sinai. And there's some interesting things to explore around this. Also, the Levites are counted, even though they don't get an inheritance. But it seems like this counting here is about the plan to move into the land and who is going to get which plot of land. And then we have the famous story of Bnot Tzlachad, this exception to the rule of these daughters who come and they advocate on their own behalf and they say, well, what about us? We deserve, should we not get a plot too? An amazing rhetorical argument. They end up getting their plot, and that transitions into this little story of Moshe on a hilltop. He stands up there. Moshe says, Hashem tells him, go and look at the land, see what you're not going to get. And he says, you know what, God, since I have you here, maybe we can talk about succession planning now. And it sounds like he has this idea, we've talked about, continuity and lineage. Pinchas got, eventually to be in the same lineage as his father. Bnot Tzlachad, you agreed, you said Cain, their argument is right. Maybe my kids can, no, Yoshua is going to be your succession instead. And why is this? Because he's an ish asher bo ruach. He has a asher ruach, ish asher ruach bo. He has a spirit in him. And the parsha ends off with what seems like a kind of random also addition to this is all the offerings, all the musafim. It says, this is the tamid, you bring this one every day, and then it goes through every single musaf, Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, all the regalim. It gives us all of the special kind of korbanot that we give throughout the year. And when I was first looking at the parsha, it all kind of seems random. We're going to go from Pinchas, which we just throw in there and we give him the whole parsha. Then we talk about the census. The census by itself makes sense. And then we have the end, the offerings. It all kind of feels like it's thrown together in maybe in an odd fashion. But when we zoom out for a second, I feel like there's a thread that helps connect the whole thing. Think about what's happening to the Bnei Israel here. We're going into the summer zman now. We have a change. They're sitting there. You think about the context of this, the second part that we talked about, the idea of Midian. This is the first time that they're really facing the challenge of the mundane life. The same thing that the Meraglim were afraid of, that they said, hey, we got to keep them in the desert here with the spiritual land. They're going to sin. They did. They were put in this place of challenge, let's call it, with the Midianites, and the first thing that happens is they end up sinning. They end up with a plague. It's kind of the first challenge almost seems as though it's a failure. And the parsha seems to give us a few different kinds of guidance on how to maybe deal with these kinds of challenges. So if you think about who Pinchas was, when I think about him as potentially a disgruntled individual. He didn't get the kahuna like the rest of his family. I could easily have argued for him being somebody who said, you know what, forget this, I'm not in. There were many different people who he could have argued with against Moshe and Aaron along the way, and he doesn't do that. We have this moment where he is kanoet kinati. He advocates on behalf of God. It almost sounds like he was waiting for this moment his whole life. And what is he granted? After this moment of rage, this killing, he's granted peace. So we have this one-off moment here where Pinchas gets up and he does this zealous act, and that stops this horrible thing that's going on with Midian. It sets in motion the transition to a positive future to actually enter the land. And his reward seems to be the opposite of what his action was. He's granted finally peace. It's kind of amazing to think about this person who was potentially in that state of being left out, to find peace as a result of this moment. If you think about the other characters that we talk about in this parsha also, the Benot Tzlafchad are people who it seems they advocate on their own behalf. They have to have some kind of a ruach of something, a spirit that allows them to go and stand up there and say, Moshe, God, should we be left out of this? And when you think about it, they even say, they recognize that their father sinned. They call that out in their argument. I can't remember exactly what the lashon is, but there's a recognition that they're also, maybe we're not deserving, maybe we are deserving, should we not? And that they're kind of open in their argument and really transparent about that. And that, in a way, allows us to shift the way that inheritance had gone up until then. God, at that point, gets up and he recognizes, yes, the fact that you advocated from this honest place, I say you're right. And that changes the lineage for their children, for every generation after this. And maybe, in a way, that's also a form of kinna, a form of this zealous momentary act. Then we look later, the story of Moshe, this idea that he wanted to have his inheritance. They bring down that he wanted to have his children inherit, but it's a medrash. There's a number of different explanations of how to think about this idea that he was looking for. Why didn't his children get to merit? So some people give him a bit of a slap on the wrist for the fact that he wasn't maybe always the most present. He was off doing his Navi leader kind of things. And you think about this in contrast, we have here in this parsha, Rabbi Sachs brings this down as his model of the three different kinds of leaders. We've got the kahuna, we've got kingship, and we have the prophet. And the kahuna and the kingship are lineages that follow, like hereditary lineages. So they follow the path. The son goes after the father, and so on. The prophet does not get that same kind of lineage and continuity. There's a number of different reasons for this, but in this specific case, it seems as though Moshe was maybe struggling with this. He says that, what's the language he uses? He says, these people are a shepherd. These people are a sheep. Don't let them go without a shepherd. He turns to God. The context of looking at this right after the census, it kind of makes sense. They were counted as sheep after all these killings and plagues and stuff that happened with the Bnei Yisrael over the past, let's say, 3-4 weeks. Is counting them as a people. And when you look at this parsha, Moshe wants his kids to go out after him. He wants them to, but Hashem says no. The prophecy is not going to be something that goes after you. But who's the person that he chooses? He chooses Yoshua, described as Ish Asher Ruach Bo. He has this kind of a spirit. And I guess we're looking through this. We have the kinna of Pinchas that's stated obviously. We have some kind of spirit that's infused into the Benot Tzlafchad, maybe not written as literally. We have the Ruach of Yoshua that is stated again in sort of intentionally. There's some kind of spirit that's required at a moment of transition. But how do we think about this in the context of more broad daily life? I think that's where the end of the parsha comes in and brings this whole thing home. It says, I'm going to tell you now about all the musafim, all the special things that are supposed to happen in your life. These are the moments. There's going to be special things. You think about life, you want to have special moments. You want to have these kind of things that stand out for us. Maybe I want to have a sense of spirit all the time in my life. But what does God do at the beginning of that passage, right before he tells us about all these musafim, all these additional things that you're supposed to have to infuse the Spirit, he says there is tamid. There is something that has to happen every single day, and that's kind of the baseline. So, in a way, it sounds like Parshas Pinchas is an entire maybe expose of helping us understand this balance. That there are going to be moments, especially in transition, of spirit, of maybe infusing us with a moment of zeal, and we have to keep our energy up for those kinds of moments. But the way to do it is to find the mundane things that we have to do in our lives and keep them going. There's a story that I'll end off with that I saw yesterday on the internet from Rabbi Jacobson. I can't remember which Rebbe it was, but somebody comes to shul, they drive to shul, and they go to the Rebbe and they say, Rebbe, I'm here. I drove to shul. And the Rebbe says, again, I wish I had the Yiddish phrase for it. He says, I'm just so happy you're here. You come however you want, whenever you want, so long as you're here. And the natural reaction is, what is the Rebbe telling this guy? You should not drive to shul. Could have been maybe a nice way to say it. Oh, give him some kind of a call out, whatever it is that you want to say. But the Rebbe at this point was trying to find the point of connection with this person, to give him, if at any point inside of him he was going to have a half an idea that, oh, if the Rebbe says don't come, he'll latch on to that and find that as his way of disconnecting from the lineage of the Bnei Israel, of the nation. And I think that this maybe is infused in this parsha more than anything else, is this idea that sometimes we can put aside those, the idea of like the perfect right thing, and sometimes you just find the way of connecting to bring that in, whether it's through, Bnot Tzlafchad and inviting them back into the fold, whether it's through accepting that it's not your own lineage that's going to continue, whatever it is that maybe we have to give up on to ultimately shift from that kano, that zealotry to shalom is really what allows us to continue as properly as we need to. So that's Pinchas.